Hello, YouTube. This is the 8-9 combo. I'm Brett McKay. This is Harry Jones, and this is Games of the Week. Hello, mate. How you doing?
How's it, Brett? In the few occasions that I'm in my house with my dog, I have a ritual, and it determines whether the day is good and whether the fates will align. And it involves a tennis ball, and I stand at a certain predetermined spot in the den, and before me I have this narrow, little, tiny target through the library, into the bedroom, into the bathroom, and then into the walk-in closet. And if I can get the first bounce just right and avoid the sprinting dog who tries to get the ball before it gets through those narrow chain, and it goes all the way, and it goes and it hits the back wall of the closet, I know that is an incredible throw. And lately I've added the same thing, another thing, which is when it's pod time, to get microphone and phone and stand and notes and everything loaded up. Pick the right StreamYard, the new, shout out to the StreamYard, shout out to the yard. It's almost like that is my new ritual. If that goes well and my microphone and my headphones work and we are incommunicado, then it's awesome. So it's going to be a good day. Yeah.
Look, we're connected. We're here. We're going. We're still talking. Can you believe it's only 2 weeks since we were in Sydney?
Oh, yeah. That is weird. Yeah, weird is
it's gone quick.
Test rugby is so great also because it's so frenetic, and then the end it's like now we're in kind of the peaceful lull in between.
Now we can just sort of slow down. The Rugby Championship is indeed
Edmed play in the NPC against big monstrous Kiwis.
The Rugby Championship is indeed behind us for 2024, and we are really pleased to have been brought to you through the tournament by Chasing the Sun 2, the wonderful 5-part all-access series documenting South Africa's journey to a wonderful 2023 Rugby World Cup win in France, and which is now available to watch on RugbyPass TV worldwide. Just head to RugbyPass.tv, sign up for free, and watch it wherever you are. It's the end of the rugby week once again, mate, but we do absolutely want everyone to go back and find episode 34 of the 8-9 Combo Rugby podcast with Jared Wright from Planet Rugby. That was a really good look back on the final round of the TRC, the Box first Southern Hemisphere title since 2019. And actually really good. I actually enjoyed the discussion at the end about the future of the tournament and what it might look like in the coming years. There was a bit in that.
There's nobody who's more up on everything than Jared. He's just like the bird dog of rugby.
He gets through he's prolific. Just he writes some stuff, doesn't he? So go back and listen to that. It's a really good chat. I'll catch it on the YouTube channel as well. We will get into Games of the Week shortly, but with the Rugby Championship done, we wanted to revisit something that we did after the July test, which, mate, is simply to ask now, in the context of the Rugby Championship, what have we learned about the 4 countries? And let's do it in alphabetical order. So let's start with Argentina. What have we learned?
I typically look at a tournament and I say to myself, what was the best match that team played? And then I try to see if that coincides with the end of the tournament. Like, were you getting better? And this is actually why Johnny Sexton's autobiography, Obsessed, I think has something wrong with it, which is, and it's just one quote, but he talks about how the best team in the tournament didn't win because we were number 1, and we got knocked off in the quarterfinals, and everyone knows that the ranking was still ranking. And I was thinking, actually, the All Blacks and the Springboks in the Rugby World Cup just kept getting better. So whatever ceiling you thought, it's like false ceilings with Jared Wright.
Fake ceilings.
You actually didn't really have the ability to flex all the way up. And that's why the All Blacks and Springboks were the last 2 teams standing. Okay. So same thing here with Argentina. I think it's a wonderful tournament. If you go on their website and you see what does Argentina feature, it's their, semifinal, the 3rd place in 2007, the semifinals in 15 and 23. And then you see their wins. You'll see on their website, first win in the TRC against Australia in 2014, first win over the All Blacks 2020, and the first win over New Zealand in New Zealand 2022. And this year, I think, you say the first time they've beaten all three in the TRC in 1 year. So all that's great. The thing that bothers me is their best game was the first game. And I think that's the struggle for Argentina is, beating New Zealand 38-30 in Wellington was the best match because they did it. They did it to New Zealand. They put them on their heels. They kept going. It was decisive. It's very difficult to beat New Zealand in New Zealand. Even Ireland celebrates that as one of their best things ever. So I think when you look at the tournament as a whole and you say, I think that final round, they just were done. And so constructing your tournament has to be around getting to the end the strongest. And so that's the challenge for Argentina. I think they're up to it. They're young, and they're probably too young right now. They were too young. But that's how I would encapsulate their tournament is they kind of peaked too early, and then they were hanging on in the fumes on round 6.
Do you not think that the win over the Box in round 5 was better than that win in round 8?
Nah, it was at home, and there were obviously 7 first-line starters for the Box rested.
Okay.
Whereas going into the mouth of the beast, the All Blacks, and winning, I think I know for sure that's going to be on their website because it is. So every time they beat New Zealand in New Zealand, they think that is the pinnacle. So I think it would have to be like if, for example, if they had gone to Nelspruit and beaten that version of the Box, that would be one of the best wins of their history.
They in Wellington, they clawed New Zealand in, got ahead, and then went away with them. You're right. Whereas in Argentina, they edged ahead, scrambled ahead, and then South Africa still had a chance to win it. Yeah,
and had to watch it. And had to watch a kick miss.
And had to watch a kick not miss. Yeah. What about their makeup in some areas was pretty solid. Chocobadas played 12 in all 6 games and was rock solid. I would say literally their backline linchpin. Montoya up front leads well. But around him, the locks changed a fair. The front row was pretty consistent, but the locks changed a bit. The back row seemed to do, okay, right, you go one to the left for the next game. And they all sort of, did that each game. The halves changed a bit. Even back 3 players changed a bit. So personnel-wise, I think there's a core group there.
There is. If you look at the all-time most capped Pumas, the top 7, a lot of those guys are playing right now. So clearly, finishing. Paulo Matera is 2nd most capped. Montoya 3rd most capped. Alamano, the lock that we kind of forget sometimes, is 4th most capped Puma in history. Kubeli, who's not playing, then Lavanini. So Lavanini's in the mix as well. And guess who the 7th most capped Puma ever is? Contepomi, the coach. So you're looking at probably the best season, except there's a problem, and we all know it, which is in the game that we talked about with their best 38-30 against New Zealand, they didn't have any scrums. Like De Groot and Lomax went off before the scrums, and then Argentina won 2 scrum penalties, which is ironic. Whereas
Ox just towed them up in mobility.
In Nelspruit, it was like literally that Ben O'Keefe could have awarded a penalty try in the first 5 minutes because it was just so insane. So I think the Pumas lack that thing, and over the course of a tournament, you're not going to have 6 games where you don't have scrums. You're going to have scrums, and you're going to get found out. So they've got to find props. Where's a prop in Argentina? Find some props, some scrummaging.
It's got to be there somewhere. They've got to be there somewhere. What have we learned about Australia?
So for me, best game of Australia was interesting because almost like it was the second half of the Bledisloe 1 that we were at together in Sydney, plus the first half of Bledisloe 2. So I'm going to cheat here and say, if you could find a way to amalgamate those two.
Plus the last 10 minutes of La Plata.
So I'll do that. So the good news, so there's good news in that is that it's the second to last game and the last game of the tournament. And so I feel like Australia was getting better. And I think we learned, obviously, that there's one set of props, Bell and Tupou. There's a loose trio that looks like it's pretty good with even someone like for like, Tizano, a poor man's version of McKay, but McKay is brilliant. but Valentini, McWright, Wilson, three serviceable nines. I don't know who you pick, but they're okay. An okay 10, a decent midfield, but need a bigger 12. I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna go back to the son of Ferg and some speed on a field from minute 0 to minute 80. So as good as the wings can be, I think that has to change. And then finally, I think there's a bench that's forming here with LSL and Gleason, maybe some other guys coming back in the mix. I just wonder about the back line at the end of games because like everything. Everything after Noah was bad. I mean, it just felt like Ben Donaldson didn't work. Tom Liner's not ready.
Tom Liner's
still an NPC.
Josh Fluke's a good player, but he's not really giving a lot of impact. The bench. I'm going to go back to the starting team, but the bench is interesting because I think Salakai Loto goes back into the starting side if he's fit.
Probably has to.
He goes straight back in for England. It Twickers in a month's time, so he goes straight back in. Does that make the bench better or worse? I like
him on the bench, though. I like him on the bench.
Oh, he's been great. He's been absolutely fantastic on the bench. But to keep him on the bench, I think you would need to have probably one or maybe even two overseas locks coming back into the side. And I don't know whether that's going to be the case. Yes, there's a lot of talk about Skelton and he gets mentioned very, very often. But we've heard Joe Schmidt speak very openly about how difficult it actually is to get players out of the front. And I'm reading between the lines here. I'm not actually hearing a lot of interest / commitment on Skelton's side of this. Does he need to play these tests in November? I'm not sort of seeing that he absolutely wants to play. And
my source in France tells me that Skelton does not want to play, and that there's a bit of a game going on. We've talked before about what Demonzi's had. Actually, I think what he's doing is saying things that he knows Joe cannot do, and then he goes, "Oh well, we couldn't meet. We couldn't meet in the middle." But
we tried.
The list of prerequisites is too crazy for Joe. He's not gonna do those things. He's not gonna structure the whole team around a guy who could be injured 5 minutes in, and then you go, "Oh, now what's going on?" Yeah, I think he likes his captain. I think he likes his setup. I do think the Wallabies need a mole defending, line out.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah,
I don't disagree with that.
That's not Skelton. Skelton's not a line out option.
No, if it's not Skelton, I'm not 100% sure. It might be Isaac Rodder, maybe. But my point in all this is to say that I think Salakai Loto starts against England because I think he has to. So
probably
how the bench impact then looks going forward will be interesting. I agree with you. I think the halves are relatively settled. I think Gordon and Lolosio have established themselves as Schmidt's first choice. I think he's pretty happy with the back row. I know there's discussions and articles floating around about Wilson as a captain and whether he holds his place as a number 8. I think he was fine, and I get the argument that Valentini at 8, you're better off, and if that opens the window for moving Salakai Loto or Williams to 6, but I understand all that. I'm not sure it'll happen at the moment. I think Wilson's doing actually a pretty good job there.
I stick by what was the best game, and it was second half of Bledisloe, first half of second Bledisloe, and the combination between McWright and Wilson looks good, and you want that on the field. Valentini's going to do the same, whether he's at a 6 on his back or 8 on his back. He gives you the same carry-centric game. But an 8 has to do more than that. And I think the Wallabies looked better with, the big bear who has got a map in his head. And I felt like Wilson at his best was steering the team really well.
Was doing that.
And what we also really lacked in Wallaby land is a captain that the referees don't get annoyed by. And he's just a
and he's learning
guy,
that. He's very much learning that on the job. So it's in his he's 4 tests into his captaincy career, and the last thing he'd be wanting to do is get referees offside already. It's
personality driven though. Some guys will do it from day one, and he's just a guy. He's likable. He's likable as a human being. Yeah.
No, very true. Very true. It'd be interesting to see how it goes. I'd like to see some speed brought on to the bench at the very least. And if it's not Max Jorgensen, it's nearly got to be Corey Toole. So anyway, that's
yeah.
I think that's needed, and so hopefully that happens in November. Interesting that they're talking about 64 players going north, and half of that being in an Australian 15 side to play England A and Bristol. I think it's the other one they're playing. So anyway, we'll see how that all plays out.
They're using this. Rugby Australia is using the same travel budget that I do. It's just mysterious. There's never any money. And suddenly, we can fly 64 guys to eat every day over in England. That's amazing.
I'm assuming there's an accountant in both cases that knows what's going on. What did we learn about New Zealand, mate?
So New Zealand got better because I think I actually think their best game was probably the final game against Australia. Sorry, but I think they came together. And here's the problem for New Zealand, and this has been an overall problem for a while now. They've been very historical based. When you go back, I did something recently. I just said, taking 2011, 15, 19, 23, and I compared All Blacks and Springboks, and I just said, who makes the composite team of those all 4 World Cups? And it came out 7-8 or 8-7, depending on whether you like Nonu versus the Damon Delende, or Brody Retallick versus Eben Etzebeth, or Beast or Ox versus Woodcock, whatever. But it's 8-7, 8-7, 8. But interesting, the only current one that was on the list of All Blacks was Beauden Barrett, whereas all the Box guys who got on the list, besides one, were current. And so I thought, New Zealand has a changing in the guard, and they haven't found, with 1/5 of the gene pool of their team from one farm in Taranaki, a dairy farm, and sort of 3 sets of cousins, they're having a hard time with new blood. And I felt like that's the story of New Zealand. And so even when they won, they kind of went back to their roots. They kind of... they just kind of did things with their wings. Like there was the old All Black wing thing, the fullback thing. There were just moments of brilliance. You had Anton Leonard-Brown giving it to Will Jordan. You have Sam Cane playing really well, and Damon McKenzie, Artie Surveyor. These are people who've been around for a while.
Yeah.
And so I guess the struggle, besides Wallace Atiti, is, can New Zealand find enough something to keep upping the ante and keep pace with the developments of Ireland and South Africa and the others. But I thought they got better through the tournament, and they deserved their second spot. I've joked about how Argentina was really second place because they had a chance to win, but New Zealand deserves it because they just kept getting better. They had their worst match was round 1, where they lost on home ground to Argentina, and their best one is they won by 20, which is not hard, not very shabby.
I think I don't think it's a coincidence that their best game comes with a proper game manager at 10.
Yeah.
Barrett comes back at 10, and they let the create. That's not to say that I'm not trying to downplay Barrett's role at 10, but he provided the width for Linnett Brown and Jordan to do their things out wide. And
there's something to be said when
there was a more directness to it. They were less lateral. Yeah. So
the way I put it is, when you know where your 10 is and you know what your 10 is going to do, sometimes that's better than not knowing. The unpredictability of Mackenzie didn't always work in his favor.
Yes. Known knowns versus known unknowns, etc. The question is going to be how much of that team stays together for the next 2 years. I think that's a fair question.
Yeah, there's people going out. Who's the oldest living All Black is apparently a guy named McCaw. No, not that McCaw, but a guy named William McCaw. He's 97. And there are a few positions on the field where you feel like they still haven't really moved on and found, best in class, world class. And
it's funny that you say that, because Sam Cane may or may not play another test, and he's just played his 100th. Yet we're still talking about McCaw. Yeah, it's funny. What did we learn about South Africa, mate? I can sum this up by saying, not much. They're still pretty good.
So if I thought that the Australia was too slow, and I thought that the All Blacks were a little bit too short at lock, and I thought that the Pumas were too young, I would say the Boks were too much. They were just too much. They were too much. The crowds were too much. The pitch invaders, the coach is always too much. The whole vibe is too much. The pre-games with the trapeze artists and people ripping off their clothes to show budgie smugglers and dancing bands, and I don't know what's next. But there was the spirit of joy, revival. It might make you sick, guys, but it is definitely the biggest thing in rugby right now is the whole scene in South Africa. So I think they played a couple of very good matches, but I think the last one was the best. So again, this is the sign of a good tournament team. It looked like with at round 6, the Boks could have said, "Let's just keep playing for a few weeks because we got more guys."
They started and finished on a fairly similar point, I think, and they might have done that in between. But they started with a couple of statement wins in Australia. They finished very much with a statement win on the home soil. So it definitely wasn't a straight line from one point to the next. They tried lots of things. They tried lots of play. The Wallabies used 43 players, I think, so far in 2024. How many did Rassie used? It'd be way more than that, is my guess. In fact, I think you told me. Is it 50 odd?
Yeah, I had that stat. Yeah, it's over 50.
You did tell me.
I think Rassie put that out. For me, they built and got better because I thought that they were able to win in Australia without too much digging deep. I thought the 2 wins over All Blacks went to the next level and level of physicality and speed. And then I think that final round, if you look at it across the board on the attack, with 7 tries, and I like the balance instead of having it all on the bomb squad or vice versa. It was like 27 in the first hour with Mani and Jaden, and then Andre and Kubas come on and do 21 in the final 15 minutes. That 27 and then 21 is really balanced, and it. For the first time, I felt like, they could just keep putting different combinations and scoring, and then only giving up 1 try, 171 passes, which is unbelievable for the Boks, 12 offloads, line breaks galore. I think the line-out was fixed. The line-out was kind of shit all tournament until then. And then once the line-out's fixed, if you give the Boks 9 attacking line-outs, it's going to be a rough day.
Yeah. The biggest stat that I took away from the Boks this year was, and I think it was Charlie Morgan actually, was the one I saw highlighted it. South Africa in 6 tests through the Rugby Championship conceded 10 tries. Yeah. And 4 of them were in 20 mad minutes in Argentina.
Exactly.
And 4 of them were at Ellis Park against New Zealand.
Yeah, and they took that really personally because at the final, so the game was won. Obviously, it was 48-7. But at the death, they would not let Argentina score again.
No,
and I thought that was a big tribute back to the DNA of the Boks, which is it should always be so difficult to score against them. Other thing they learned, I think, is no cards, and you can tell the story.
No cards at all.
In the 6th round, and so it got better and better because the Boks were leaking cards. And the thing about rugby right now is there's going to be cards. It's not a question of having a cardless game. Most games have a card now. You've got to be the team that forces the card. And so the repetitive infringements thing forced 3 cards on Argentina, and Argentina had not been carded up until that time. I think the other thing is 27 kicks is about the right sweet spot for the Boks for the 6th round. On the games where they kicked 20 or less didn't look right, and the ones where it went 30 plus, it was a little bit too much. So I think all teams have to find their right spot, and I think the All Blacks also played better when they kicked about 25 to 30 times. They didn't do very well when they kicked 14 times.
2 little things there. The only team to score in both tests against South Africa was Argentina. So Australia and New Zealand were both held trialless in a game each. And just on the topic of cards, and because this is something that I have kept track of and have written about in recent years, Australia only conceded 3 yellow cards for the Rugby Championship in 6 tests, which is actually pretty good. And 2 of them were
progress.
One was the 80th minute, one was the 72nd or 3rd minute, Uru in Argentina. So, late game cards are a bit different, I think, to first 15-minute cards, I think. So it's interesting. It's an interesting chat. It's interesting to see how the teams are evolving. And I guess the big test now is what they're going to look like in November, because I think there'll be a degree of change and experimentation. These November tests traditionally get used as a point of experience. And Joe Schmidt, from a Wallabies point of view, has said outright, these 4 tests are against the Lions countries. So we've got to now start betting systems down. So this will be his last chance to try a few things, I think. So we'll see how it looks, and we will get into that as the November tests go. Quickly, mate, just through some games for coming up this weekend. It's round 3 of the ERC. There's some interesting games there. Have you got a standout there somewhere?
Yeah, I'm pick the game of the Matadors, the Lions versus Edinburgh, where they should score
Ellis Park on Saturday.
Should score 1,000.
It feels like it could be high scoring, doesn't it?
Yeah, it should be just I think it's been the first match for Edinburgh, or the most recent was 47-55 was their score line. Lions 35-22.
Yeah.
So 35-47. Who's going to have the 47? Who have the 35? I think it's going to be an 80-plus point
Just
game.
80 or 90 point game. Yeah. That'll be interesting. I'll be interested to see how Zebra go. Can they back up the win against Munster? We'll see.
No.
We'll see. And how do Munster
No.
bounce back themselves in Limerick?
I don't think Zebra even believed that. I thought that was just like, oh, wow. And so I think Munster, who's Munster playing? Ooh, I wouldn't want to play them right now.
Ospreys, yeah. So you're giving the Stormers a chance then this weekend against Zebra.
Tiny bit.
Yeah, righto. Round 3 of the Premiership. I beg your pardon. I think the pick there is probably Northampton Harlequins on Friday. I think they're
wins.
Maybe, yeah, that could be. Bath Bristol at the Rec could be interesting on Saturday as well. So there's a couple of good games this weekend, I must say. So we'll keep an eye on those.
Speaking of scoring, the Premiership has been just a scoring league as well. Everyone's just scoring tries at will.
Except Leicester, though. They've had 2 fairly low-scoring games in a row.
It's always except Leicester. But like if you look at, I think there was a record. There was a record amount of points scored total.
Yeah.
And
on the topic of Leicester,
ball and play is really high in the Premiership.
Yeah. Yep. On the topic of Leicester, Michael Checker out of action for a week already, having been found to have disrespected a match official last week in there.
Very, very bad. Do not disrespect the match official.
It's not a good look. It's not a good look to be having that argument with match officials. And it was a 2-week suspension with a week
on that.
Week held over,
the voice of 8-9 combo sat in the HIA observation box, and I hadn't really thought about how weird and lonely it is to be in the HIA observation box. And so if a coach was coming at you, it would be kind of weird because you're kind of stuck. Yeah. You're kind of in the middle of nowhere. You got no protection. You're not like surrounded by guards. You're just the HIA.
Did it happen in the tunnel? Did it happen pitch side? And his argument was, why wasn't Solomon Akata taken off instead of being left on to then high tackle and yellow card? Anyway, we'll see. It's round 5 of the top 14. What do you think? What's the standout? Or do you not care?
My position on top 14 is I don't get involved in the French league yet. Also, I'm kind of pissed off at the French because, they've been doing stuff for a long, but that's not the story. The story is like people, they always do that. It's particularly galling when they announce
they're getting away with
a year ahead of time to go, you know what? Who really controls rugby in France is, a cabal of owners, and we just don't care. So even if you really want to see,
so we're going to announce it 12 months
play and have a blockbuster series, and we can help New Zealand generate some money. Nah, we're just going to field a C team, and we saw how that went in the Argentina tour. It's a big debacle.
Yeah. And because we're getting ready for a World Cup, God, it's 2 years away still. I agree. Look, it's ridiculous. And I think New Zealand.
And it's all brought upon by the fact that top 14 plays 1 million matches. So now I'm miffed at them. I'm not going to talk about that.
Okay, fair. It's the final round of the NPC in New Zealand. And I think the pick this weekend is on Sunday. First place Tasman hosting third place Taranaki in a Ranfurly Shield defence as well. That'll be a cracking game on Sunday. And look, I think Wellington Hawke's Bay, that's second against fifth, is worth a look as well. Hawke's Bay are a point out of the top 4, so if they can win there, they can potentially get in and host a final next week. But there it is, full time, mate, on another Games of the Week, wrapping up the Southern Hemisphere international season. I can't believe it's done already. Where's the rugby year going, mate?
It's all going with Tane Edmed and North Harbour, who will make the playoffs and squeeze into the
we'll see.
team format of the NPC this weekend.
8-team finals in a 14-team competition. That might be another chat for another day too. Our plans for Games of the Week for the next month or so. Obviously, there's no test matches coming on, but we're going to go back to the original format. So there'll be sort of weekly, fairly short, sharp previews of the ERC and the Premiership, and we'll maybe occasionally talk about France as well, and whatever's floating our boat going into a particular weekend. So tell us what you think and what you'd love to see at the 8-9 combo on all the socials, or you can leave your thoughts right here as well on the YouTube channel. And we love to see them coming in. We're getting around them as much as we can. So leave us a comment, and Harry and I will definitely see them. We'll definitely see interactions on the socials in our usual places as well. Make sure you are subscribed across all the platforms and YouTube and all that, and make sure you don't miss anything. Turn your notifications on, all that business. And don't forget to head to RugbyPass.tv, where you can now catch both series of Chasing the Sun, the fantastic doco series celebrating South Africa's twin Rugby World Cup wins in Japan and France. And Chasing the Sun too. It's just, we've been talking about it for 8 weeks, but it's just such a brilliant series, mate. So I hope everyone has taken the time to go out and watch it.
Yes, transparency is the key to documentaries.
Absolutely,
and that's
absolutely.
What he did.
Absolutely. So head to rugbypass.tv, sign up for free, and watch it wherever you are. This is Games of the Week from the 8-9 combo, the short side set piece combination you didn't realize you needed, coming from the podcast you already had. I'm Brett McKay. He's Harry Jones, and we will be back in your ears next week.
Come play with us. That was for Johan.